this is Lemmy with RevZilla TV. I'm bebopping around today on the Harley Davidson Street 750. With its long suspension travel, short wheelbase, and liquid cooling, this thing is unlike anything HD has ever offered before. We gotta take this thing to an appropriate spot to evaluate it. Come on, let's go for a rip.
Now, I've got several pet theories as to why the Street series of motorcycles even exists. Could be Harley just trying to modernize their lineup a little bit. Of course, could be Harley also becoming aware the global customer is changing a little bit. Could also be a matter just as simple as trying to circumvent some of the Indian tax laws. Regardless of what I think about any of that, let's look at what Harley says about this thing. They're saying the Street 750 is an urban, city-built bike. This thing is for dodging potholes, splitting lanes, and running the back alleys. And I'm inclined to agree with them. Harley recognized that urban riders have a different set of needs than their more traditional customer. Long wheelbases and air cooling just don't cut it for a guy who's ripping around the city. HD also correctly identified the fact that a rider who needs a smaller bike doesn't necessarily want a watered down or a neutered bike. They want the same pop, punch, and pizzazz that comes with the standard Harley models. They just want it in a little smaller package. So HD has really done a great job packaging this thing up and planting it firmly for those who are doing city riding and commuting. Now, with respect to competition, Harley Street 750 faces it in two areas, both internally and externally. Now, internally, the Street 750, of course, is going to face some pressure from its little brother, the Street 500. Somebody considering the Street 750 is probably wondering if they can get by with something with a little smaller motor, and they're looking to the Street 500. Of course, the guy who's dead set on buying a Harley 2 is probably also looking up the food chain a little bit at the next nicest model, which would be the Harley Sportster Iron 883. Externally, however, competition is no less stiff. Kawasaki has the Vulcan S, and Honda also has the Shadow line. Both of those are very close competitors. The Vulcan S is newly redesigned, and the Shadow series has been around for a long time, but that means it's also gone through many refinements. Both are going to be very tough customers for the Street 750 to beat. So those of you who are observant may have noticed that I'm kind of a big boy. Typically means I'm riding big bikes for big miles at big speeds. That's not what the Street 750 is built for. We brought it here to filthy its intended environment, the city of brotherly love, for some urban riding. I'm gonna rip this thing in the city, all around, in the tight confines of a big East Coast metropolis. We're gonna see if this thing actually holds up to Harley's claims that this is the perfect city bike. Let's jump on this baby. I'm gonna show you what I love about the Street 750.
Alright, I'm here in North Philly jamming on the Street 750. And this is where she's supposed to be right at home. Now normally city riding doesn't really do it for me, especially not on a traditional Harley. It's hot, it's packed, I can't see what's going on, there's terrible pavement all over the place, you can see me bopping over here. But it's not that bad when I have the correct bike. Being liquid cooled, this thing is designed to deal with stop and go traffic. Every now and then here I've heard my fans kicking on. It's pretty nice, I know they're keeping this thing cool. Now, when I first started riding the Street 750, I fell in love instantly with this engine. It's got plenty of punch, plenty of power to do whatever it is that I'm looking to do. The other thing I really like about this is that it must have crazy light flywheels in it. This thing gets up to power, the engine is super responsive. Realistically, this thing pulls almost like a parallel twin. It's got lots of oomph, lots of grunt, gives up maybe a little bit at the top end, but there's plenty of power here. This engine is also pretty practical too, though, for an urban commuter. I shot down the highway here, averaging about 70 miles an hour, and I turned in 46 miles to the gallon. That's pretty frugal for a bike with this kind of power. I was really pleased with it. One of the other things that makes the 750 an excellent choice is how nimble this bike is. Boy, I can just slice and juke, get out of the way of anything that's in my way. Handles way better than a Sportster could ever have prayed to. I really do like that. Take a peek down here. Look at that profile on the front tire. Makes it really easy to flip this bike from one side back over to the other. If you're trying to dart something or dodge, get out of the way, this bike is on top of it. I don't have to think about it, I just point and shoot. These nice wide handlebars here too make that really easy. The other thing I love about this bike is kind of related to the handling, and that's the suspension. It's not very great suspension. I'm not winning any AMA Superbike races with this thing, but I can't bottom it out. That's important. If I am unable to dodge my way out of something, as you can see me doing now, it's very easy to get up on the pegs and dirt bike this thing. But the thing I love is because the suspension travel is so great, when I hop up and I'm bouncing over stuff, this isn't bottoming, and I'm significantly bigger than the intended purchaser of this. I mean, no motorcycle manufacturer is designing a bike for a 265-pound guy, yet I'm on this thing, jumping on it, beating it, hitting the biggest potholes I'm running into, and everything is just fine. I haven't bottomed this bike once. It really is kind of incredible. It's totally different than a standard HD. I think I started to really fall in love with this machine when I realized that I'm not the guy that Harley designed this bike for, but I'm still having a blast on this thing, and I'm having a blast on it when I'm doing things that I don't normally like to do. This is not my riding style at all, but I'm having a blast doing this. I can ride aggressively, and I can also know too the bike's gonna perform when I need it to.
So if it's not immediately evident, I think the Street 750 has got a lot going for it. From that darling of a motor to the awesome suspension travel, and then add in that razor sharp handling, and this thing has got all the bones to be a great city bike. One of the other things I love about this too is all this pillion space back here. You got lots of room for a passenger, especially considering the overall short wheelbase of the Street 750. Now, I've been riding, building, and modifying bikes for a pretty long time. I feel very qualified to tell you where a bike might be falling short. One of the things I noticed as soon as I swung a leg over this thing was the front brake feel. Spongy and mushy, it's kind of terrible. It's a 1-2 punch of badness though, because the front brake is also not very effective. It just doesn't slow the bike down adequately, especially when you consider how much power the 750 has. One of the other things I didn't really dig on this thing was the shift feel. If you look down there at the shifter, you can see all sorts of linkage. Every spot in that linkage is a spot where shifter slop can actually occur. I had a lot of false neutrals and more missed 1-2 shifts than I care to count. My final gripe with this bike is really the overall fit, function, ergonomics sort of package that Harley provides you. You can see in a couple areas right off the bat that things are a little weird. These mirrors look good, but they're really not super functional due to where they're placed. Some of the other things I noticed too were odd duck things like loose connectors just sort of hanging out. Seems a little strange on a $7,500 bike. One of the other things that I also didn't really love is how my feet in particular interfaced with this motorcycle. Your feet are in a weird place. It's not uncomfortable, but it is kind of strange, especially considering how close some of the other pieces of the motorcycle are to you. Let's jump on this thing, we'll get out there, we'll take a ride, and I'm going to show you how some of these problems manifest themselves in real-world riding scenarios.
Alrighty, now the Street 750 has many strong points, for sure, but there's also some things going against it. They seem like they're little things at first, but after having lived with them for several hundred miles, I got some issue with a couple of these things. The first and most noticeable is this front brake. It's not doing anything. Look exactly how far I'm moving this lever, and absolutely nothing is happening. That's a big problem. It's nearly at the bars. I was appalled at how bad this thing actually was. I just couldn't believe this brake came on a bike in 2015. I wound up using the old HD method of using all rear brake. I'll come skidding into every stop. Here, look, just like this. Whee! My rear was all locked up there, as you might have been able to see. My front, maybe it was coming to a stop. It's fun, but it's not something that I want to be repeating all the time. And for a newbie, it can probably be a little disconcerting to be on a motorcycle that just doesn't have a lot of front brake. Who knows what's going to happen when you need to stop quick, fast, and in a hurry. It's a little confusing, especially considering that HD is expecting riders who are looking at this bike to have some metric experience. They're going to be expecting a strong front brake showing, but they're not necessarily going to get it. So one of the other things I didn't dig at all was the shift feel. The shifts are not positive, they're not firm. I have absolutely no idea when I'm making a shift. I have so many missed 1-2 shifts on this, it really is frustrating. Don't get me wrong, the lever is traveling. I can feel the lever hit the end of its travel, but what I'm not necessarily getting is a good solid indication that I've made a shift. I'm not too picky when it comes to how my shifts actually feel. Again, whether it's a Japanese snick I'm getting, or if it's a Harley agricultural clunk, I just need something to let me know I hit the gear, or if I didn't, to go back and dig again for it. That's a problem. So the final issue I had a little bit of a problem with was fit, finish, ergonomics sort of stuff. How the rider's actually interfacing with the bike. Check out these mirrors. No matter how I adjust these, I can see left, I can see right, but I can't see anything coming up behind me. Especially in a city environment, super important to be able to watch your six. These mirrors have absolutely got to go. There's some other stuff too, like look at my foot position down here. I'm sitting my foot on the peg. I like the way my foot feels in the peg when I rest on the balls of my toes, but it's not really something I can do because the rear of my boot, as you can see, is tapping the exhaust shield. Now, if I put my foot where HD intended, using my heel to set on the peg, I can't really be comfortable. Nobody really uses foot pegs and puts their heel in the foot peg, so you're either making a choice between uncomfortable foot position or burned boots and ugly looking exhaust shields. It's not so hot. The other thing too is this turn signal and kill switch setup here. Now these clamshells are a little on the chintzy side, but it's not the worst thing ever. I can definitely deal with it. But one of the things I'm not digging is these turn signals, and over here on the right side is this kill switch. They're set up to operate laterally, that's no big deal, and the turn signals operate like standard metric turn signals. Kind of like that, it is a bit of a standardization. What I don't like about it, however, is how they're recessed. See how these things are set deep into the boxes? It means that a gloved hand can't easily access them. I can't tell you how many times I thought I wiped the turn signal off, but it just wound up staying on. I'd see it blinking later on my dash. Again, not the hugest thing in the world, and all of these problems are fixable.
Alrighty, now you've just seen the Street 750 in all her glory, warts and all. Is this thing a worthy contender? Well, if it's gonna ravage the city streets, it's gotta do a little bit better than what Harley sent it out of the factory with. Now at RevZilla, we're doers, not complainers. I wouldn't be doing my job as a reviewer if I gave you a list of complaints and didn't tell you what needed to be done at home by you guys to solve this should you wind up with the Street 750 in your garage. First, I discussed that braking, that terrible lever feel, and the awful front end performance. You can grab a set of toothier pads, a little different compound than what Harley kicked this thing out of the factory with. You could also throw a stainless brake line onto this. I think that's going to improve the lever feel quite a bit. With a couple of simple parts up front, we can totally eliminate that entire braking issue. One of the other things I'd really like to swap out on this thing has got to be the pipe. This sounds like a kitchen appliance, and it's unfortunate too, because this thing really has the soul of a monster inside of it. We stuck a couple slip-on pipes on this thing at the shop, and man, it sounded absolutely awesome. I would have to have one of those if I had a Street 750 for myself. The final item of note is I had severed those mirrors. These mirrors are just shy of a safety hazard. When you're bopping around the city, you need to know what's coming up behind you. You can't do it with these things. We need some mirrors with taller and wider stems to push them up and out so we can see everything that's going on behind us. It'd really be that simple. Most of you guys who did this should be able to do this in your garage really quickly. Just a couple hours worth of work and not too many bucks, and this bike is gonna be top notch. Is the Street 750 for you? Well, if you're an urban rider looking to slay somebody on an 883 and you want a bike that's a little bit more nimble and a little bit lighter, this is probably your bike. If you're still on the fence though, jump over to my Common Tread article where I do a full-on review on this thing. I went through it and really pounded this thing down. I did almost 1,000 miles on it. I had a lot to say beyond what you've seen here in the video. Check us out on YouTube, subscribe to us so you can see all of our other bike reviews. Thanks for ripping around the city with us. As always, I'm Lemmy, I'm out of here.